Revenge and retaliate. Enlightenment from head of state. Revenge and retaliate.
So the book looks at a series of photographic images, most of them taken by still camera, but some also video stills and posters, some graphic design work. But I focus on the concept of photography because photography has been a really important technology. It's been a really important mode of documenting and also a discourse for producing race in the United States. So I'm looking at photography as this really powerful force to tell a story about race in the United States. Perhaps one of the more controversial aspects of the book is the idea that the black icon is produced through a twinning of veneration and denigration. And I know for a lot of scholars of race, it's the notion of denigration is a really fraught and charged concept because it literally means to blacken, to disparage, to defame. But my argument is that the history of the production of black figures is one that is always read in and against that notion. So I look at the black icon as this, as a figure that is constantly in some ways moving between this notion of being lauded, worshipped, adored, and being belittled, treated with hostility, dehumanized, and so this is really the crux of the argument. And I think in some ways it's an argument that others might take issue with, but I hope it opens up a productive debate around what is the role and what is the function of the black icon. And I do look at briefly the history of the icon as a religious figure, as a religious type of painting that brings people together as a mode of worship. And so the black icon does that, and at the same time that type of worshiping is always textured through a history of exploitation, and not just exploitation, but of literally and figuratively being written as non-human, being written out of the discourse of what is a political subject, what is a subject of value. So the black icon, the black figure is one that functions historically and even in the present to define the limits and the outer limits of American democracy. Who emerges through racialized violence, so the posthumous icon. And for that chapter, I chose to focus on Trayvon Martin. And I chose to focus on Trayvon Martin in large part because as I started writing the project in 2012, it was during a time when there was incredible activism and new modes of activism, one would say, through social media around his very tragic death. So I wanted to have an opportunity to think about that and how his image, how his selfie served as a social force in terms of building momentum for activists and for sympathizers to really vocalize their concerns about the lack of justice, but also to really demand a type of accountability from the state and from the public more broadly to look at and to think about the vulnerability of black young men and black youth broadly in public space. Why is it that Trayvon Martin's race, youth, and fashion makes him vulnerable? And I wanted to, just an opportunity to sit on that, and I thought, for me there was no better way to honor the sacrifices of his parents and to connect with their mourning than to really just sit with it and to sit with the feelings that it evoked, the activism, his image, the love that his parents generated and spread and that other people became a part of, and to center much of those meditations on an image that he produced of himself, and that was the Martin image in the hood that became really a central piece, rallying cry image around the Justice for Trayvon Martin case.
Baby's got an itch. Your wrong state. Soon the resident.
And so one chapter is on Trayvon Martin. I have a chapter that's also on documenting and visualizing Black political leadership, and where I really try to think through the visualization of a narrative about Black male leadership and the way that artists and designers and the public more broadly attempt to create a linear narrative around a type of exceptional male leader. And I pull on the work of some other scholars who've done work on like charisma and Black political leadership, such as Erica Edwards and Ivy Wilson, to think about this trajectory from Frederick Douglass to Martin Luther King to an Obama, and what kind of story are these images of Black male political leadership telling us about the promise of American democracy or the failure of American democracy. So I use these images and the way that these images circulate broadly in public culture through mass media, but also through just user-generated media, websites, fandom, blogs, collages, as emblematic of the progress of American democracy or its failure.
Looking like cuz whose hair don't kick.
The image of Diana Ross that's on the cover of the book is a photograph from the very early 70s done by celebrity photographer Harry Langdon. I came across that image probably when I was a teen, and I always had a love for Diana Ross. And I just found the image I've always been drawn into the image. The image draws me in. I find it incredibly seductive. It is enticing, appealing, and so I've sat with that image a lot thinking, well, how does this image function as such a powerful image? Why am I so compelled to look at it? And so it made me to start to think about how Diana Ross and her Motown producers cultivated her as a singular icon in the 70s, and the labor that was involved in actually producing her as a celebrity icon. That this was not something that just happened overnight, but it was quite strategic, it was labor intensive, there are lots of trial and errors, and so that chapter 3 really is an opportunity for me to think about the making of Black celebrity icons and how they function broadly in American entertainment culture. I also have a chapter that looks at Black sports icons. And that chapter was really a challenge to write because we, in American culture and history, there are so many amazing examples of Black American sports icons and athletes who have broken world records, who have integrated sports, who have become the face of all kinds of commercial products. So we are very, very, very familiar with the Black athlete as a type of celebrity or as someone with iconic status, someone who's greatly venerated at times and then denigrated at other times. O.J. Simpson is the classic example of a star, an athlete going from someone who's, venerated, who's worshipped, who's applauded, and then who is, denigrated and seen as the worst type of criminal possible, as a beast, as a monster, as an animal. I chose not to write about O.J. Simpson because he has been written about so much, and his name garners such intense, evocative feelings that I thought, okay, what if I wanted to focus on more subtle moments where we're still wavering between a type of veneration and denigration of the athlete. One of the things that I think is peculiar about professional sports is that the language of professional sports mirrors the language of slavery almost probably closer than any other capitalist enterprise in contemporary culture. I mean, we use the language of trading. We talk about the body of athletes in some of the most kind of explicit and obscene terms. We talk about trading blocks. We talk about the draft. So we weigh and size the athletes in the same way that slaves were marketed, and we really embrace that kind of language, the language, the discourse, and the spectacle of professional sports. So I wanted to think about that, but also think about two contemporary athletes who play in and perhaps against some of that narrative around the sports icon. And I chose to focus on LeBron James and Serena Williams, in part because they're both so dominant in the sports that they, quote, master, again, using this language of slavery. But they also have a sophisticated and tricky relationship with a broader, kind of dominant, more white American public. And I wanted to think about that relationship. How do they really navigate the tricky waters of being these exceptionally talented, dominant figures in their respective sports, and still, playing in and against certain kind of expectations placed upon them?